Hola, gringas and gringos. Welcome to Gringos Are Us, expats with a plan. This week we're going to talk a little bit about safety on this episode. Coming up next. Welcome back. You can see I'm flying solo today. First time I'm doing this all by myself. But want to touch on some of the things that have been going on in both the media and how safe are we really here in Mexico. If you're new to our channel and you just found us, welcome. We invite you to subscribe and stay with us and join our little community here at Gringos Are Us. If you're getting any information out of this, please make sure to give us a thumbs up, like the video, share it, and as always, subscribe and ring that bell. That way you'll be notified of all new content when it drops. In the last year, there's been several events that have been featured in the news rather prominently. There was the young lady from my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina that was killed in Cabo San Lucas. There was the public defender who was found dead at his resort in Rosarito Beach, celebrating his first anniversary with his wife. There was the young architect from Cincinnati who was down visiting his fiancée in the Aguas Calientes, Zacatecas area, who was tragically murdered on Christmas night. And there has been some things that have occurred in the state of Quintana Roo. So just wanted to touch base on a couple of these because they made the news, especially in the U.S., and also tell you about how safe we feel here in Mexico. Number one, let's sort of take these case by case. The young lady who was tragically murdered in Los Cabos. Actually, an arrest warrant has been put out for one of her traveling companions. Video was uncovered that showed an altercation with one of her traveling companions, and both the FBI and the Mexican police are now looking to arrest this traveling companion. In the case of the public defender who died in Rosarito Beach, the Mexican police and the coroner have said that it was a death by a fall from the third floor balcony, and the family is disputing this, saying that he was killed, and they are doing an independent autopsy in the States now that they have the body back to try and ascertain as to what exactly happened. And the one in Zacatecas, unfortunately, that one was a case where he's a architect from Cincinnati, and he has citizenship in both the U.S. and in Mexico. So he was fluent, knows the area, had been down many times to visit his fiancée, and they were out with two family members of his fiancée. The four of them were out on Christmas night, never returned. The family of the fiancée attempted to text the young lady and received a text back that stated nothing more than an address, and at that address they found the car that was bullet riddled, and the police located four bodies that were buried in shallow graves very close to the vehicle. That one, I think, is a case probably of wrong place, wrong time. And we'll go into some of that here in a little bit. In Quintana Roo, there have been some very strange things occurred. Two Canadians were killed, and one was to the hospital. Then they were all shot, and apparently all three of them had extensive records. involving drugs. And the police in Quintana Roo have determined that there was some cartel involvement in this, and that this was probably a drug deal gone bad. 2 Canadian citizens in Playa del Carmen, a man and a woman, were stabbed in their resort, and one of them was wanted by Interpol. Make of that what you want. There was also the story of the man from Utah last January who has this really bizarre story of leaving to go get chewing tobacco. And the taxi driver, according to his story, the taxi driver took him to an OXXO, didn't have it. He asked to go to a bigger store so he could get some. Was taken to what he described as a grocery store, and then was attacked, and then it was left in a ditch to die. He wandered out, found a police station, and they shoot him away. And then he was taken by another police officer, given some bandages, and sent and taken to the airport where his wife had already left him, and taken the flight back to the States. And they kicked him out of a wheelchair. Again, this is all his story. And a passerby put him up in a hotel room, bought him a shirt, and the next day he was able to fly back to the States, where he stayed in the hospital for months. If the wounds were that bad, how does he just get on a plane? And number 2, I have yet to find any encounter where I've ever dealt with any of the Mexican people where they would just turn their back and go away. So there's a lot of very questionable things in that account. There was a sad story a couple years ago of the 2 diners in a Tulum restaurant who were unfortunately caught in a crossfire between rival cartels in a restaurant, and they were both subsequently killed. That's about 6 instances, and a lot of them have very questionable as to how much the Mexican lifestyle played into causing their deaths. So, what does that tell us? It tells us that if you're going to do bad things can occur. But from our perspective, what we do to make ourselves feel safe, and folks, let me tell you right now, we have not felt uncomfortable in the 3 months we've been down here at any time. Whether it be walking in Centro and Querétaro, walking in Centro here in lovely San Miguel, driving, and we have driven to Amialco, Quisquiapan, Bernal, and then made the drive all the way down from the border, which if you want to watch that, videos are up here. And never once did we feel uncomfortable, much less unsafe. So that being said, how do we continue to provide safety for ourselves and feel this way? We do several things. One of the first things we do is we pay attention to the news. There are several news sites that are in English that give you the news of what's going on, similar to what recently occurred in Mazatlan when the arrest of El Chapo's son occurred, and in the state of Sinaloa, the cartel raised some havoc and created some civil unrest. Not that that's ever not been seen in the States. And it was a little hairy for a while. And people just stayed in place. There were no reports of any tourists or anything like that were harmed. Some have claimed that they had their car keys taken. Some claim that they lost their phones. And some missed their flights because they actually did close the airports in the state of Sinaloa. So what we do is we read the news. We had planned on, after leaving, when we decided to leave San Miguel in a couple of months, the next stop was going to be Guanajuato. But in reading the news, what we have encountered was that the state of Guanajuato is now one of the highest murder rates in all of Mexico. And that is due to some cartels having turf wars over who's going to control what part of the state. Well, we looked at that and quickly determined that, you know what, it's probably not smart for us to drive through the middle of this state and go to and spend a month in the city of Guanajuato. So we changed our plans. Guanajuato will sometime later in our efforts, in our travels, be added back in when we're in the area. Hopefully, if everything calms down. If it doesn't, well, then maybe somebody's telling us that we don't need to be in Guanajuato. But, so we keep up with the news, know what's going on in the current events. When we drove from Monterrey to Aguascalientes, some people have asked us why we did not instead take the route of going from Monterrey to San Luis Potosí. A couple of reasons. Number one, there had been a couple of instances in the state of San Luis Potosí. One where a hotel had been, all 31 people had been abducted from the hotel. And number two is that we had heard that that road is very windy and that there were sometimes accidents and it could take you hours. Well, hours could have meant that we were driving at night. So we decided to opt to taking the long route to Aguascalientes. It was a little less windy, a little longer, but a little bit of an easier drive. Again, it's paying attention to what the current events are and looking at it and going, we feel safer doing it this way. We added a couple hours, c'est la vie. The second thing we do is we plan in advance. When we drove down here, we had the plan already worked out. We drive, and the drives are planned so that there's always at least 3 hours of daylight. That way, in case something occurs on the drive, we still have time that we're not driving around at night. Driving around at night provides several different obstacles. Not just the fact that you have the possibility of being carjacked, something bad happening to you. Something bad could happen to you in the way of a four-legged animal walking out onto the highway. We have seen numerous cows, horses standing next to the highway. Well, something spooks them and they run out. Not a good collision. The other thing that we do is we plan in advance. You know, we stay in the auto moteles. I know there's other benefits for staying in the auto moteles, but the main reason we do it is because that way we get to use the garage. We put the car in the garage. It's not seen. Nobody sees the foreign plates. Nobody sees all of our stuff packed in there. We pull it in, we close the door, we're done for the night. And in doing that, one of the things I will recommend is if you have the ability to do so and your schedule allows it, travel during the week, because during the week you normally get 12 hours in the auto moteles, and on the weekends, on Friday and Saturday when Gina and I came down, it's half that time for the same price. So just for the sake of being able to stay for 12 hours and then also being able to save a little money, and they don't cost a whole heck of a lot to begin with, but it's a couple dollars saved. So plan your drive, then drive your plan. Keep doing what you're doing. And number two, be cognizant of what's going on. When we drove, I never left ourselves out there all by ourselves. There was always some sort of traffic around. We stayed on the toll roads as much as we could, and we pretty much flowed with the flow of traffic. Didn't want to keep up with the Audis and the Mercedes. They drive at a rate that the Kia just sort of went, no, I'm not doing that. But there's enough traffic that you can stay with it, that it feels safe. The second part of that is we never let ourselves get under half a tank of gas. When we do stop for gas, it's always someplace that is extremely populated, that there's a lot of people either selling goods in the stores, at the gas pumps, has restaurants, has the baños, which I'm always ready to stop for a baño. But you take advantage of being in a populated area. And then you're always paying attention. It's just like any place else in the world. You know, I've traveled Europe, I've traveled now in Mexico, I've been in all 50 states. You got to pay attention. There's places that you're going to be that are not safe, regardless of what country you're in. So you pay attention. If things look shady, trust it to be shady. And just go, nope, not even going to go down that road. Be careful of what jewelry you're showing. Don't flash a big wad of money. And just do the common sense things. Pickpockets, again, prevalent everywhere. I mean, anytime you've got a lot of people and you've got disparaging income levels, you're going to have people who are going to try and take advantage of that. And I've always, for years, for 40 some years now, my wallet's always been in my front pocket. Somebody wants to go in my front pocket, I know that they're in my front pocket. But, you know, it is doing common sense things that are going to keep you safe. But the final thing really on all of this is that we have never felt uncomfortable. The people here are warm, gracious. They've always been welcoming, and it has been an absolute phenomenal 3 months here. And like we said, have never felt uncomfortable at any time. Well, we may have been uncomfortable, and that was due to the fact that we didn't speak the language very well. But that's an uncomfortability that we've installed upon ourselves because our Spanish isn't where it needs to be yet. But the people have been great. So it's all about practicing common sense, doing what you're supposed to do, and just being aware of your surroundings. And that can be true whether you're in the US, Canada, Mexico, wherever you are in the world. Practice common sense. Don't put yourself in stupid situations or dangerous situations. Do what you need to do to make sure that you're safe. And 90% of the time, you're going to be fine. The odd places are going to be if you're going to find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time. That can occur to anybody. But if you try and keep yourself from having those events occur, that will help protect you a lot. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch today. We appreciate it. The next one, I guarantee, will have Gina back into it. That way you guys get the eye candy. Aww. And we want to thank all of you for everything that you've done to help make this channel grow. It's been a phenomenal growth. And with that, we're going to wrap this up. Everybody stay safe. We are Gringos Are Us, expats with a plan. Remember, we are doing it. You can too. Adios.